retired four-star Army General David Petraeus. His storied career includes leading U.S. coalition forces in Iraq and commanding U.S. and NATO forces in Afghanistan. He also served as CIA director under President Obama. General Petraeus is now chairman of the KKR Global Institute and chairs their Veterans at Work program. Also joining us, Paul Rieckhoff. He's founder and CEO of the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America War. He's an Iraq war veteran. Gentlemen, thank you. Great to have you both on.
Great to be with you.
Is there anyone that needs convincing that the skills that these guys across the board, I mean, I think about, I don't know how I'm any good at it. I mean, they have faced things that I have no concept of and most of the time excelled. Why do you still have to convince people they're the right people to hire? I don't get it.
Yeah, I think that's not a very hard sell increasingly. I think businesses are experiencing exactly what you've said, that it's not just the right thing to do to hire a veteran, it's the smart thing to do. But beyond that, we want to get our veterans careers, not just jobs. And that means that the firms need to invest in them. They need to educate, train, and mentor. Along the way, and that's what's really important. In fact, next week, KKR and a number of the other large private equity firms are going to be hosting over 400 companies here in New York to discuss lessons learned of the various firms. KKR, for example, has hired nearly 42,000 veterans now with its portfolio companies in America alone.
I mean, I would think that when you're in the armed forces, there's privates and there's generals, but everybody's leading, aren't they? I mean, even a private has peers, and he wants to lead for them, and I just think it instills those type of values that are absolutely transferable to the business world. No?
That's right. I mean, they've self-selected as leaders. They've stepped forward to serve this country,
right,
and they want to continue to serve in different ways. They're also incredibly entrepreneurial. They know how to make things happen in tough environments. You know, when things are rough, you need people who can handle it. And the men and women who served in Iraq and Afghanistan have been doing that for over a decade. So we're not a charity. We're an investment. You know, you guys talk every day about investment opportunities. This is a generation of people who are an investment opportunity for our country across every industry, across every business. And I think that message is getting out there. But on Veterans Day, it's a perfect time to ram it home.
And, you know, this is America's new greatest generation. In fact, Tom Brokaw is the one that announced that, if you will, after he was with us back in 2003 when I was privileged to command the 101st Airborne Division in northern Iraq, in Mosul, in fact. He spent a day with us, and as he was leaving, he said, surely this is the new greatest generation. That from the man who, of course, wrote the book about the greatest generation, and he's right.
You happy about the election?
Well, I'm actually nonpartisan, apolitical, so
didn't get the notes,
the system has worked.
Let me ask you this. You made some comments earlier during the campaign, not directly. You never used the word Donald Trump, but you were worried a little bit about some of the language that was being used, I think, at the time, around Muslims and things like that. Do you have any anxiety there? And then, obviously, people who worked with you, Mike Morell and others, were much more direct in their view about Trump.
Well, again, I've always been up front. I've worked for Democrats and Republicans in the White House. I've advised candidates of either party. I continue to do that. And at the end of the day, what has to happen now, in fact, I just finished a piece for the New York Times that'll go in this Sunday, and my advice is you got to rebuild the center. Rebuild the center on domestic issues and rebuild the center on national security and foreign policy issues. And by the way, this is a political outsider, a deal maker, who can indeed forge a new coalition, and that's what has to happen. People have to give a little to get a lot.
You're going to relitigate all of the Trump comments.
I was going to go to the
There's an opportunity here too, though. You can rebuild around veterans. right? Our country is extremely divided. Supporting veterans might be the one thing we can all agree on, bring partisan folks together. And we've launched a campaign this week called Operation Unite America. Veterans Day is just a couple days after the election. Let's use this as a time to bring folks together of all political backgrounds and have them bring us forward.
General.
This is the other 1%. You know, you all have a lot of 1%ers at this table. Today we're talking about the 1% of individuals, men and women, who raised their right hand and took an oath at a time of war. This is the Iraq and Afghanistan veterans of America that he leads, and they're extraordinary individuals. They knew that they were going to war when they raised their right hand, and now they're back. Nearly 3 million of them have served since 9/11 and then entered the civilian workforce. And now it's about ensuring that we capitalize on the extraordinary attributes and qualities that they bring to the civilian work.
God help us if we never, I mean, we need people like that, obviously, to protect us and to protect our values. But if we ever don't have guys with that experience in society, that I think we talked about Blankfein earlier. I think he was the guy on the way into the New York Fed financial crisis, and the person with him said, you know, I think I'm going to throw up. I'm not going to be able to do this. I can't go into the New York Fed. And he goes, you're not in a freaking U-boat, you know, storming Normandy. You're going into the New York Fed. I mean, you guys.
You referred to Omaha.
Omaha Beach. You guys have a totally different set of skills and life experience that, you know, I don't know if I'm envious because I don't know what would happen to me, but you guys are a different breed. You really are.
They're a generation of men and women who can handle adversity. And we saw the World War II generation come home and build the middle class and really drive our economy because they could get stuff done in really trying times. So they're the people you can depend on. And we see it in every sector, in finance, in tech, in energy, especially in areas of operation, execution. They're people you can count on in a chaotic environment to get things done. And also, they're not just privates. They're also generals and colonels and strategic leaders who can really help us in complicated times.
Let me ask you a different question, and that is, what's the right action for the United States from here? Policemen of the world, or pull back and let the chips fall where they may?
Well, this is one of the areas I think that the president-elect, when he takes office, is going to have to navigate. We have seen what happens if America is overactive, hyperactive, if you will.
And now we've
also seen what happens if America draws back. And there's a fine, narrow line that we have to walk where we do need to provide leadership for the world in a variety of different endeavors, without question. America is the #1 economy, the greatest military, still a voice that is the loudest, if you will, in any given situation.
So do we enforce a no-fly zone in Syria? Do we work with the Russians to defeat ISIS? How do we approach it?
Well, again, this is going to be a time to have some strategic dialogue with countries where we have not had that, where relationships have frayed. There are.
Tried that with Iran, and I don't know if that worked out very well, did it, General?
There are converging interests here. There are also some very significant diverging interests, and we have to go into these with our eyes wide open.
What would you do with the Iran deal? Would you keep it?
With Iran, first of all, what I'd do with Iran is the president ought to work with Congress, and of course they own it now. This is all Republicans. And the first thing they ought to do is announce a statement of national policy that is that Iran will never be allowed to enrich uranium to weapons grade, period. Now, of course, the Iranians have said they don't want a nuclear weapon, so they shouldn't be concerned about this. And then maintain the capability to ensure that's the case. And then also, let me finish.
Go ahead.
And then also work with our partners in the region and our ally to counter the malign Iranian influence that is causing such significant challenges.
The president thought it was a good idea to bring our enemies maybe closer. I'm talking about Iran, even though they still say things about, you know, the great Satan and destroying Israel and everything else. Would that not apply to Putin? Do you not bring your enemies closer? Would you ever call him a frenemy? Is it possible for him to be a frenemy of the United States?
Well, you're talking to a guy that promoted reconciliation at a critical moment in Iraq during the surge. By the way, the surge that mattered most is a surge of ideas, a change in strategy, not the surge of forces. One of the biggest of the big ideas was the fact that you can't kill or capture your way out of an industrial strength insurgency. You've got to reconcile with as many as you can, some of whom had our blood on their hands, and then you go even more.
So that would argue for do it with Iran and Russia, then, wouldn't it?
No, I just think all that means is that you should not hesitate to engage in countries that are adversaries in many respects, but certainly may have some common interests in other respects. By the way, we're going to have to do the same thing with China.
Right.
This is our #1 trading partner now.
Right.
And the two biggest economies in the world, but there clearly is a divergence of interest when it comes to the South China Sea, the East China Sea, a variety of other issues, and we're going to have to figure out how to deal with these. So China, for example, is the key to issues with North Korea. If there are going to be sanctions on North Korea, China is going to have to support them, or else they won't work.
One of the controversies during the election was when Donald Trump started talking about whether or not the NATO allies were spending enough of their GDP on their self-defense, which is part of the requirement of being a member of NATO.
2% of GDP.
And the vast majority do not. Is that going to change at any point?
Well, I hope so, actually. You know, Secretary Gates, I remember his valedictory address, if you will, at the North Atlantic Council. I was there as the commander from Afghanistan, was to say, you're not doing enough. And it went down farther after that. Now, actually, to be fair, it has come back a bit, in part because of Vladimir Putin. I mean, NATO's new reason for living is because of Russia's aggressive actions in Crimea and Ukraine.
And they finally woke up that it would be their continent he would roll across instead of ours.
There's still more to be done, and so I think it is not unhelpful to have a president of the United States actually push these allies and remind them that we're doing the lion's share here, but we need to make this a coalition in which all are contributing to the best of their ability.
General Petraeus, thank you.
Thank you.
And Paul Rykov, thank you. Thanks for being with us this morning.
Great to be with you.
Thanks.
Thanks for every day.
Well, thanks on this Veterans Day in particular.
And part of, you know, I don't know, as you get older, if I see like Reagan with the boys of, you know, that
Normandy.
Every time I see it, I mean, I think about it.
Well, they'll be out in communities nationwide today. We want to invite everybody to join us at Veterans Day. Veterans Day is for all Americans. Here in New York, we'll have thousands, and in cities nationwide.
No veteran should be homeless. No veteran should be.
And we need folks to get involved. So make every day Veterans Day. Go to iava.org if you want to find ways to be involved and help, and particularly to focus on the employment issue, which needs that continued focus.
Thank you.
Great to be with you.
Thank you.